This is a story about sound, specific sounds that the CIA might have used to train psychic spies. A sound that could help you leave your body. I've traveled the world experiencing ancient practices and mind-bending phenomena, but what I witnessed inside this remote campus in Virginia was completely different. Here, sound doesn't just soothe like at a retreat. It shifts awareness and maybe shifts reality. In the hills of Virginia, there's a place where scientists, soldiers, and spiritual seekers come together. Founded by a radio executive named Robert Monroe, a man who wasn't looking for enlightenment. He just wanted to understand why people couldn't sleep. What he discovered turned into a technology and became a gateway into the unknown. And then it wasn't just him. Others began to have the same experience, a vibration, a hum, then the feeling of separating from their body.
Since the 1970s, the research team at the Monroe Institute has been studying this phenomenon and has been mapping the brainwave activity of people in specific states of awareness that Robert Monroe identified through his experiences.
What Robert Monroe found, and what researchers here continue to refine, is a system of consciousness expansion based on sound. They call it Hemi-Sync. Two slightly different tones are played in each ear. Your brain hears the difference, not as a tone, but as a third beat. And that phantom tone is what alters your brainwaves.
And so that's, you can do it without it. Now, most of us like to include that support, but in the middle of the night, in a situation that you're just not prepared, you can immediately access these different states of awareness for different purposes, whether it's to calm yourself down or help with some pain that you're dealing with or relax.
Bob Monroe worked in radio, made a fortune through that before he set up the Institute. And, he took that into exploring altered states of consciousness. And when you have this idea of the radio, then this is just one channel. And, of course, you still need a radio to pick up the other channel. So that's your brain.
That's just such a great analogy.
But then you turn the dial, and then you can turn it back. So this is what we call phasing at Monroe. Because the out-of-body experience is a spectrum of experiences. And you were mentioning remote viewing, for instance, or lucid dreaming, and the classic out-of-body experience. And some people might experience themselves peeling out of their body in an energy duplicate, turning around, seeing their body in the bed and flying out the window. That's the classic. But remote viewing, you're sat here making notes.
Now, if you've been listening for a while, I don't just talk about things. I experiment with them. I push boundaries like I did with so many treatments on this channel. You'll have to go back and look. And let me tell you that Quantum Upgrade is actually next level. It's a cutting edge technology that taps into the power of quantum energy to elevate your mental clarity, vitality, and even the energetic frequency in the spaces that you're in. Yeah, I have Quantum Upgrade for my house, and let me tell you, my guests can feel it. I've noticed the difference in my focus, my overall state, and even the way I show up every day. And if you're someone who's always looking to optimize your health, your performance, and your environment, this is something you need to check out. And the best part is that you don't have to take my word for it. Quantum Upgrade is giving, quite frankly, listeners a 14-day free trial so you can experience it for yourself. So just go to quantumupgrade.io and use the code FRANKLY to activate your free trial. Energy is everything, and if you're ready to level up your frequency, Quantum Upgrade is the way to do it. Declassified CIA documents later confirmed the US military used these very tapes to train remote viewers, intelligence officers who could see targets from even thousands of miles away. The US military has always sought an edge, from performance-enhancing drugs to neural implants and genetic engineering. The goal has always been the same: to craft the ultimate soldier. But in 1983, something very different landed on the desk of Army intelligence. It wasn't a weapon or a blueprint. It was a 30-page document, part scientific report, part metaphysical manual, detailing a method to leave the physical body behind and gather intelligence beyond space and time. This report, authored by Lieutenant Colonel Wayne McDonnell, was titled Analysis and Assessment of the Gateway Process, and for a while, it was top secret. I spent a week at the Monroe Institute doing their Gateway Voyage, the same program that trained CIA remote viewers during Project Stargate. I think it was about day 3 or 4 when I had this wild experience. We were in something called Focus 21, and Focus 21 is not only an expanded awareness or beyond space and time, it's beyond physical reality. And that's the place where people report having contact with extraterrestrial beings and, helpful spirits or entities that we've called forward for assistance. And at one point, it was the very end of the meditation, probably even just like the last minute or two. And I felt, and I say felt because it was transparent, this being in front of me. And I just imagined it to be like Casper, the friendly ghost, just transparent and in front of me. And they started to take us out of the meditation, like back into this reality. And I was like, wait. Do you have a message for me? And it said, just tap your forehead 3 times and we'll come whenever you need us. And I said, what is your name? And all of a sudden, hands started to put themselves all over my face, my head, my body. I mean, thousands of hands, just like a pile of hands. And I just heard Elo, Elo, Elo. And then it went Elohim, 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 Elohim. And all these hands, Elohim, Elohim, Elohim. And then we came out of the meditation. And I remember it was some kind of it felt like some kind of an initiation. Something really powerful was happening. I don't even know that I should be sharing these kinds of things anymore, to be honest with you. Some things just feel very personal now and unnecessary to share. More and more it has nothing to do with this video, but more and more I feel like in the next couple of years, I will have said what I needed to say and step away, or at least things will change form. But when we got into the group at Monroe is so helpful. Right after every experience that we have, we all come together and we talk about it, we chat, and then we'll go do more, and then we'll eat, and then we'll come back and chat, and then go do more. So it's really just wildly different from doing it at home, which I'll explain later. But we got together in this group and, everyone's sharing, and I said, yeah, I don't know, this thing came to me and said it was Elohim. And out of the group of 20, 25 people that were there, maybe 20, about 4 of them were like, oh, and they knew what it was. And they explained it to me that it was in pre-Hebrew, it was like the original word for many gods. I think maybe Sumerian, I don't remember where it came from, but then it later became a biblical word as well for God. But they took out the S. It was actually gods. It was the creators, this Elohim energy. I've definitely gone down that rabbit hole since Monroe. So if you're interested, look it up. It's Elohim. Monroe Institute CEO Alan Evans was kind enough to help lead all the trainings during the week, which she doesn't normally have the time to do. And she talked to me about the pull this space has on certain people. Do you think that there's because as I hear you tell that story, do you think that there's some kind of a pull that the place itself has where there's certain people that are just I don't know why, but I need to go there? Is it like a telepathic pull or something?
I think so. As you're saying this, it's so funny because I'm just getting covered in goosebumps.
Yeah.
As you're asking that question. But when I walked into the building, and you didn't stay we have 2 venues now. So when I walked into the main campus venue, we call it Nancy Penn Center after Bob Monroe's wife, I turned a corner and all of a sudden I was just flooded with this, you are home. It was just, it overwhelmed me how solid the message or the knowing was that I'm home. And then when I came back for the next program, I'm in the shuttle. You know, we pick people up from the airport and bring them here. And I'm texting my husband at the time to let him know I'm there. You know, I'm just about to arrive. And I text, I am home.
Oh, wow.
I look down and I go, oh, no. So I caught it before I sent it.
Wow.
Because I thought, he's not going to like that.
He's not going to like that. And that reminds me, because you told me, you said something about how at one point, I don't know if it was your first or second visit, you kind of had that feeling of like, I think I'm going to be running this place one day or something. And you even felt like I shouldn't be having that thought. This is my ego. Right. But it was kind of like a download.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm writing a book right now, so I've been reading my journal entries from that time, you know, from 2008 to 2010. So that's why I know this right now, because, you know, you rarely remember these kind of things.
Yeah.
But I had written in my journal in 2000, and it might have been as early as 2008, but at least by 2009, that spring, that I had this crazy feeling that I was going to be the executive director one day. But before I could write it down, I had to say, this is crazy. I'm just an observer here. I'm just getting this message. I don't have any expectations, but I'm going to record it. And so I have a lot of journal entries like that, you know, where I reframe it to say, you know, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing.
How are you with out-of-body experiences?
So I've had them. I started with them I started spontaneously, but I think it was because I had a dedicated practice of meditation and intention. Right. And I didn't necessarily have an intention to go out of body, but I had the intention of exploration, you know, expanding, growing. And I've had the classic, you know, where you see, you know, you can look down and see yourself in the bed. You shake, like you feel this vibration, and then you might hear a sound like a train noise. You know, the common things you hear, but that stopped pretty quickly. You know, after I had started having them, and so once I started having them, I did focus on it, and I would make it an effort. And so I have a whole journal of recording those experiences. And then at some point, I was like, well, I put my attention somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so when they happen spontaneously now, it's like, oh, yay. You know, I do enjoy it, but I don't spend time or attention helping it. Yeah, because it's like I've been there, I've done that. And projected consciousness is where the value is for me. And OBE is more of a just kind of journeying around, checking things out. If that makes sense.
Yeah, kind of just letting you know for sure that you're more than the body, but you're just kind of like still checking out your space that you're in, the vicinity that you're in physically.
Yeah. Well, no, Bob labeled it this way. Locale 1 would be the physical space you're in. Locale 2 would be an expansion of that. So it could include like the planets, galaxies, other worlds, but still within our solar system. And then locale 3 would be way beyond that, just in a totally different, like everything looks weird and different, machines are different, buses are different, you know.
Wow.
And Bob wrote about that in his, I think it was the third book.
It's interesting because Luigi, who was training with you for our class, he's just amazing. Everybody loved him too.
Yeah.
And he talks about out of body like it's nothing. He was like, yeah, there was this kid kicking the back of my chair on the airplane. Yeah. And it was really annoying, but I didn't want to like yell or, you know, I know what it's like to be a parent. So he was like, so I literally just rolled out of my body. And he was like, and then I was just right outside the plane watching myself sleep in the plane. And he just, the way he talks about it so casually.
The reason why I shared that story, I think, was because, you know, in meditation and in lucid dreaming, in out-of-body experiences, people say, you know, if I'm not perfectly relaxed, if the environment isn't like the quietest place in the middle of nowhere with no distractions, no sounds and so on, then I can't get in. You know, and I was explaining how there's kind of two routes into out-of-body experiences. And I mean, there's many, but the two camps in terms of you can take the relaxation route, which is what we like to do because it's nicer. And then there's the super stressful route. You know, people who have been tortured and beaten and whatever have popped out of body. Near-death experiences are a great example. You could be in a car crash and suddenly you're out of body. we don't recommend that. Right, so there's the ability, the capacity to move your awareness outside of your physical proximity is something that you can do gently or you can do violently. And I was sharing this story that as an example of that most of my out body experiences happen when I'm lying down in bed and middle of the night, 3 in the morning, 3, 4 in the morning, or even 6 is a nice time for me to meditate and. Planned. These are planned. Okay. Yeah. But when I was flying one time, I was exhausted. I'm flying back to England from the US, and it's obviously an overnight flight, right? It follows the night, and then you arrive in the morning in London or Manchester. And this kid was behind me, and I mean, he was so bored, and he was just kicking my chair, and I'm like, juddering forward. And, I turn and I look, and he's planked. I mean, he's literally like, he's not sat on the seat. There's the seat. There's the backrest, and he's like this, horizontal, with his shoulders against the back, and he's got his feet on my chair, and he's like, wrenching. And then I was like, I mean, you can't call a kid whatever there's words that appear. You can't say these things. Right? And then I looked across at his mother, and she was like, she was so far out of it, and I was like, with great compassion, like a bodhisattva, I thought, I'm not going to say anything, I can't do it, she needs this more than I do. I'll take the hit, I'll take one for the team. But I thought, I'm not just going to stay here and take one for the team, I'm going to meditate. So I had my headphones on, and I'm meditating, and I'm sitting in meditation, and this kid's still kicking my chair, and I'm thinking, okay, well, that's fine, and just treat it as an object of meditation. And then the next thing I know, I can feel the vibrational state, which is something that some people experience just before they have an out-of-body experience. So I'm feeling this gentle vibration pulsing through my body, and I just slip out the side of the plane. And I just watch it just go zoom right off. And I'm just there, and it's a beautiful sky. And I thought, I'm just going to enjoy this. So I flew around, and I had my experience. And then eventually, when I got back to my body, it was just slumped forward. My head was against the seat in front of me. My back was just killing me. The kid was asleep by this point, and we were just about to come into London. And I just thought, okay, you can go out of body at any time. If the motivation's strong enough, and the opportunity arises, and there's other factors, of course, but that was really one of, I'm out of here. Thomas's daughter, who I teach the lucid dreaming program with, he's at it when he was getting a really bad massage in Thailand, and he was like, screw this, I'm out. He goes out of body, and he's watching his body going, poor bastard down there, he doesn't, I'm going to leave him alone.
Our instructor for the week is a master at out-of-body experiences and gateway process in general. He's Luigi, a hypno-psychotherapist and Monroe Institute trainer and board member. There are these videos that I made years ago where we would blindfold people, tape their eyes shut, and they can still see everything. What was really interesting is that I want to know how this correlates with spoon bending or lucid dreaming or anything, but like positive mindset rather than a negative disbelieving one, because
yes,
what I noticed is that like any of those, like the ones I did in Essex, for example, they would say that any of the students who, let's say they went to school and then they would demonstrate this ability to their friends or the teachers, if the teacher was like, stop that, you're lying or whatever, or if the kids were like, oh, whatever, you're cheating, all of a sudden they would lose the ability. They couldn't do it anymore. They would have to go and retrain again. And I learned it when I learned the technique myself. I was out on the street, this was in Germany, and I'm like seeing everything, and then I could read license plates, I see the DHL guy delivering something across the street, everything. And we don't even have DHL, well, we do, but it's not big like we have FedEx and UPS, so I didn't even recognize the guy's outfit, but it was like, I said he's wearing orange and red, and he's delivering something, and yellow and red, and that's what it was. The second in that moment, I thought I was cheating. I thought, oh, well, what if I'm just peeking? Even though my eyes were closed, by the way. I still had that thought. And when I had the thought, it went pitch black, like within a second, pitch black. So the reason I bring that up is because I asked somebody, my friend the other day, I said, hey, do you want to do this course with me at Monroe? It's spoon bending. And he responded and said, oh, I've done that before somewhere else. And, he said, I think they just use weak, cheap utensils, and that's why we could bend it. And as soon as he said that, within a second, like I lost all interest in going. And I was like, yeah, you know what, what's the point? Like that was my immediate, and I realized how quickly we can just take on somebody else's negativity or like be empathetic to that. But yeah, what are your thoughts on actual mindset during these practices?
It's vital. Where to begin with that, really? Because what we're talking about here is, it isn't just mindset, but it's about what stories are we telling ourselves about ourselves, everyone else, the universe. And I like Yapko's description of this, Michael Yapko. He says, reality is believed in imagination. So which imagination are you believing in a lot right now? Because that's all it is. And everything we experience is subjective, everything. I mean, there is an objective reality, but you don't have access to it. You don't know what that is. And even here, like as we're looking, the science says this quite clearly. The blood vessels run across the back of your retina, and there's blind spots everywhere. And actually, the way that light's coming in, it's hitting the retina, and there's the image would be upside down, back to front, and stretched. It's not color. It's 24 photographs a second, essentially. It's built up the chain of command. So, and the periphery is not in color vision either. So actually what you're seeing in the edge of your visual field as color isn't even there. So there's a lot that's constructed, and we don't really appreciate top down as much as we appreciate bottom up. We tend to think, okay, well, we are these physical objective beings in a physical objective environment, and information comes in through the senses, and then it might get pieced together, but it's that way. It comes from the outside in, and we put it together. We're the ones who can be fooled. But actually, the top down allows us to filter out from that and construct from that data stream whatever reality is. So reality is constructed moment by moment, and everyone will experience something different. So it depends on what story you're telling yourself and what you've been told.
Are you a healing practitioner who is stuck in a job that drains your soul? Or maybe you are currently practicing but struggling to find the right clients and be seen? Well, in my online course, Awaken the Healer Within, I will show you how to ditch imposter syndrome. Awaken your spiritual gifts using real, ancient, Vedic, and Egyptian techniques, and all at the same time build a prosperous business with soul-aligned clients who want to pay you. I'll show you the exact strategy that took me from 4-time Emmy Award-winning journalist to healing practitioner making 6 figures. Plus, there's a weekly coaching call so that I am guiding you every step of the way. Now, if you're ready to turn your purpose into prosperity, just visit awakenedhealers.com/join.
And this is the thing about the children that you mentioned. When you're a kid, for a lot of childhood, it might even extend into adulthood, and then it starts to get a bit problematic. But a lot of childhood is very egocentric, and I don't mean that in the way that we use egocentric. I mean that you are the center of your experience, so everything seems to be happening around you and with you included in it, and therefore you can easily say that you're at cause or even at fault to whatever happens. So parents get divorced, you must have done something. Somebody dies near you, you must have done something. And this can be, used very beneficially as well. You could take credit for things that you didn't do either. So it can lead to all kinds of delusions. But the thing is, if an adult is there and says to you, this is possible, this isn't possible, you're more likely to believe them. Because they're the omnipotent being, they're the big person, right? So if the big person that you trust is telling you this is what reality can do and this is what it is, and these are what your needs are. I'm hungry, it's not lunchtime yet. Oh, so I have to ignore my feeling and go to this thing that is socially constructed as a lunchtime. It's very subtle, but some of these stories get internalized, and then we start to distrust ourselves in either small or really big ways, and everything in between, really. And we're looking out for authority figures to give us the information about what it is that we should be experiencing. And not only what we should be experiencing, how to interpret the experience that we're having. So people have these sensations, they have these needs, but then they don't know how to communicate them. So when you have a child who's just in the flow, not a storyteller, because the left hemisphere hasn't really fully developed yet. So that's the storyteller, and they're going in open. Openness to experience is the biggest predictor of somebody's ability to enter and access and benefit from expanded states of consciousness, for instance. I mean, it impacts on many other things as well, but openness to experience. So this is the right hemisphere worldview, the flow of experience of the here and now. You just get into that, you just do what you're doing, the spoon bends, whatever, you're seeing through the mask and so on. And then somebody comes along and says, discount your own perceptions because they're not valid, this does not fit into this reality, it's not possible. Then it really gives a category for your left brain to latch onto to say, okay, this is what you're allowed to experience. And the left hemisphere, it builds, it's very, very useful. We need it, so I don't want to malign it. But its job is to categorize and objectify everything, and that makes it easy to then relate to the world. So, I know what headphones are. Every time I'm looking for my headphones or something that helps me to hear something better, I don't have to keep inventing the idea of what is this thing, right? Which is what the right could do. The left has got that. I mean, you see that, when people have semantic dimensions and so on, they have to reinvent the world all the time, right? So the left hemisphere is pretty much damaged. And so we need it. We need the categorizer. However, and it fragments reality. It turns you into an object. It turns the rest of the world into an object. And therefore, we can't really feel into our interrelatedness, our interconnectedness. And that's the bit where the experience is actually happening.
Joe McMoneagle was the U.S. Army's original remote viewer, known as Agent 001, under the top-secret Project Stargate program. A decorated military intelligence officer, he was trained to use consciousness as a tool for gathering information from targets across time and space.
When we use our vision, we're using our eyes as a sensing device because our mind is locked inside the body. It's in for a long time, it's in the bone box up here.
Decades of scientific study, researchers have mapped out specific ranges of brainwaves and have found that they are directly correlated with our state of awareness. For example, brainwaves in the 4 to 8 Hz range are called theta brainwaves and are generally observed in states of REM sleep and deep meditation. Brainwaves in the 13 to 30 Hz range are called beta brainwaves.
So I knew something was going on. And so then when we got to the spoon bending thing, what I realized was, and this is something that comes from lucid dreaming as well, if you want to create something in lucid dreaming, to really manifest in the dream, to make something, the scene shift or like a cup appear, then you have to kind of get one with it. You have to realize that actually all of it is you. So I'm playing a role of character of a dream and watching the rest of the dream. So we think like here, we think subject. I'm a subject observing a world of objects, and from your perspective, it's the other way around, right? But in the dream, all of it is subject. But in this reality, we don't tend to think all of it is subject. But when in the dream, when you recognize that everything is subject, not just intellectually, but you feel that, then it's a lot easier to transform anything in the dream. And that is the state that I felt myself in when I was able to bend the spoon, and then I bent a fork, and then I bent the plastic fork, and I put a twist in it, and then I started bending some of the tines in it, and then I got excited, and I snapped one, and I stopped. Because then, the energy just went solid, and I thought, okay, something is going on here, but I know damn well that fork was shrapnel in the kitchen just the night before. So this was not a brute force or a gentle bending and not knowing that I'm in that space. I thought something is going on. And sure enough, everybody in the group ended up bending something. 19 people out of 20 bent it right there and then, and the other person then bent it immediately after the call. So a little bit of performance anxiety with everybody else. And the next day was pretty much the same. But over time, we found that it's about 85% of people are able to do it. So it's incredibly high.
And even when you have dreams and nightmares, that's usually something that you're working through on some level, whether it's processing something that happened in the last few days, or it's processing a shadow side of yourself that you've yet to recognize. The reason meditation is so helpful for individuals is because it helps the subconscious open to the conscious. And when you do that, that means you are conscious of all those subconscious messages, beliefs, tapes running in the background. Or and usually it doesn't mean it happens all at once. At least my experience is it's like a layer, peeling an onion. So you start understanding what's driving your behavior, what that shadow side is.
Participants meditate inside specifically designed isolation booths known as check units, short for Controlled Holistic Environmental Chambers. These units are actually in your bedroom, soundproofed and shielded to minimize external distractions, allowing you to fully immerse in the audio-guided gateway exercises. You know, I had done the gateway meditations, these experiences on my own at home for years anyway. In fact, I was doing like the free YouTube videos because I didn't know you could actually buy these CDs. I thought I was doing some like cool underground thing, but I was getting the free versions online, and look, they're great. I've had amazing experiences. What Luigi, one of the head instructors and board members at Monroe, told me in full honesty, like as we had become friendly and friends throughout this process, he said that when you do it at home, anybody who uploads something to YouTube, it automatically gets down converted. And so you're not getting the full real experience of the Hemi-Sync technology as it was meant to be delivered. So he was like, look, you'll have an amazing watered down experience, but the cool thing about Monroe and Gateway is that even watered down will still be powerful, but it's not the full experience as having it in the booth with the recordings on, or when you buy them online on their website. So I don't know how much of that is true. I haven't, double checked or fact checked anything, but it's what he said, and it did make sense because it was a wildly different experience in person. And of course, just being in the Blue Ridge Mountains and being on that sacred ground where we were, surrounded by crystals and nature and bird song, and just years and years of people meditating in this one space, having a group to experience this with and share your experiences together and help elevate each other, really, it just gives you a fully different, more lifted experience than doing it at home alone.
That could be that you've just shifted to where your regular state is. 'Cause like psychics and mediums, they tend to hang out in what we are calling the focus 12 or the really strong alpha theta bands going. And so it could be that you're just in a natural state, more in a strong alpha band than you were before you started this.
Then there's focus 12. And the focus 12 state of expanded awareness is where perception extends beyond the physical body, but remains within the bounds of time and space. It's often described as the first level, where participants begin to sense non-physical realities, like subtle energies, thought patterns, or the presence of others. Then we moved into focus 21, and I think this is my favorite. We did it in the check units, but also while walking around solo in the mountains. And it was a truly psychedelic experience for me personally. Focus 21 is known as the bridge to other realities, a state where the participant's consciousness moves beyond time-space as we understand it. And it's considered the gateway between physical and non-physical realms, used for exploring other dimensions, timelines, or contacting intelligences beyond the self.
What I use as an example is there was a preacher who died, and he was in a car wreck, and it was he had a 90-minute death on record. And he came back, they brought him back, and so his explanation of heaven was truly the pearly gates, the hallelujahs, angels singing hallelujah, all that. And so as I'm reading the book, and this is before I'd even gotten more into what I'm doing now, I was like, well, where are the rest of the people? Yeah, you can't tell me that no one else is going to heaven, or, heaven. And so it just really started making me question that. And so the belief territories fits into my, more into my understanding of how it could work. And even in meditation, I attended Lifeline, which is one of our Lifelines, which is one of our courses. And I visit the belief territories in some of the meditations. And I went to the Episcopalian belief territory and the Catholic territory. I was raised Episcopalian, so I think that's why that happened. But it was interesting because they were different, but I was welcome at both. And it gave me a more stronger knowing about that particular system.
The idea isn't unique to physics. McDonnell references spiritual traditions from Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism, and Tibetan teachings. Across belief systems, the messages seem to repeat. The material world is a projection, and at the core of everything is a shared eternal energy. To gain awareness, the Absolute projects a hologram of itself and observes it. In doing so, it becomes self-aware. In a sense, we are the Absolute experiencing itself through individual lives. Eventually, McDonnell gets back to the military's interest, using the process to train remote viewers, psychic spies who could collect intelligence from any location. He outlines a phased approach: train with sound, master the altered state, verify the results, then apply it for strategic operations. But between the lines, his belief in the deeper purpose shines through. He emphasizes self-knowledge and encourages removing bias and ego as part of the training. Ultimately, he saw this not just as a military asset, but a tool for human awakening.
When you want to learn remote viewing, don't do it by closing your eyes. When you close your eyes, what you're instinctively doing is you're trying to see something. What it does is it cuts your memory off to the fact that you have other sensory ability, like you have hearing and taste and smell, touch, you have all those kinds of things. When you bring all of your sensory ability into play, then you learn more very quickly. It's kind of like some of the best remote viewing I've ever seen in my life comes from people who have been blind since birth. Wow. They see the world totally differently. And so they are not into constructing something that they've seen before. They're into constructing something they just are seeing. You understand? And by seeing, I mean totally sensory-wise, not visually. So don't close your eyes. The place you want to go if you're going to try to learn remote viewing is what I call the daydreaming state. It's where somebody catches you at work and you're sitting at your desk with your eyes open, but you're not in the room. That's remote viewing. You want to be wherever it is you need to be to get the information. So the perfect act of daydreaming is a perfect act of remote viewing. But then when you get the information, you can't accept it as real. You have to accept it as what your senses are telling you. So what about it is more real than not? And you discard the parts that aren't real enough. You keep the parts that are too real. And that's the kind of thing you want to pay attention to. But because you have two disparate parts that you cannot put together, doesn't matter. You never try to put them together. You understand?
Practitioners begin to perceive something remarkable, that the world as we know it might just be an illusion. And solid matter itself might be an illusion of perception. What we see and touch are, according to the report, fields of oscillating energy. At the core, everything is vibration, including us. So our consciousness doesn't just observe the universe, It's a participant. The mind, like a radio, tunes into a narrow band of the energetic spectrum, but there are countless other frequencies out there, and with the right training, we can tune into them.
And this is what we try to get into as much as we can with Monroe, and you know, we're listening to things with binaural beats or whatever sound technology, just to get that left hemisphere analysis to quiet down a little bit. You know, if the volume was turned down of that a little bit, what else could you be perceiving that you're allowing yourself to perceive in this moment? And then that can start to open up some of these things that we tend to describe as paranormal and so on. But kids do it. You know, they're not having to go into an ashram and learn this stuff. They could do later on, but they have this natural ability. This is kind of like your birthright, but it needs to be cultivated by an environment. And most people don't find themselves in an environment that facilitates that.
And remember that 30-page document I mentioned earlier in the video? For a long time, a single page, page 25, was missing from the Gateway Report. Freedom of Information Act requests couldn't retrieve it, but after a 2021 article reignited interest, the Monroe Institute quietly released the full document. That missing page encouraged people of all cultures and religions to explore the gateway process, not as a replacement for faith, but as a tool for understanding the universe and oneself.
The thing that I always wanted to know from Bob Monroe was, what's the easiest way to teach people how to give up fear? People do things based on fear. Fear of what might happen to them, fear of what might control them, fear of what might alter their way of life, their income, everything's driven by fear.
You don't have that, do you?
I don't have any fear.
Yeah, I noticed that the first time you came in.
Yeah. No, I gave fear up a long time ago because I know it's going to happen. I don't have to be here.
Here's what some of my classmates had to say about their experience.
During one of the meditations at the Monroe Institute, I went into this space. I would call it the field, the space of creation. And I've been there before a few times, and it was always this big, open, white expanse with nothing in it. But this time, during the experience, I expanded my awareness, and I realized that in this space, in this place, it was actually a blueprint that was layered over everything. And it looked like a computer network. And I realized that if I laid myself down upon it, I could become part of the blueprint. And what I realized is that we are all part of this massive blueprint. And it's just a matter of knowing it and deciding what part of the blueprint we want to be part of. And within that blueprint, the coolest part is that anything is possible. And that was the most amazing thing to realize while I was at the Monroe Institute. Every single time I go to the Monroe Institute, I remember that we are all one, that we are all connected, and that there's not just me in this world, that there's also a we. And one of the most beautiful experiences during my experience at the Monroe Institute this last time I was there was that I got to experience the me within the we. And I understand that we are all a piece of a much bigger whole. And remembering that is just so empowering. And it really helps when you know that, because I live in New York. I live in the belly of the beast. So knowing that we are all one when I'm back here in New York, where everyone feels like we are not all one, we are all individuals, is really helpful. And I will hold on to that little piece of knowledge as I continue on through my life.
There is so much magic at the Monroe Institute. I got to sit in this incredible darkness void where I actually encountered my parents, and they reminded me of one of my biggest life lessons and missions, which is to normalize death. I felt like every night while I slept there, I was working behind the scenes in my subconscious, really optimizing my life and optimizing the impact that I'm gonna make on people. Interesting enough, about 5 of the participants also told me that I came to them in meditations, which was interesting because, like I said, during my sleep, I felt like I was working. So I must have been traveling and appearing in people's meditations and dreams. So I can't express enough how much I loved the experience at the Monroe Institute and what a profound and deep effect it has, and it will always have in me.
This is telepathy, if nothing else, right? I wrote in my planner in November of 2024, after talking to a friend and we were talking about our gateway experiences, I said, hey, I can't even think about it right now. I'm overwhelmed, I'm busy, I have no bandwidth to add even one more thing to my plate, like even to just research this. So I'm gonna put it in my planner that on January 28th, I'll reach out to the Monroe Institute and see if they have any in-person classes available. Keep in mind, like that's how unprepared I was. I didn't even Google to see if they offered courses, which of course they do, and they sell out way in advance. So book that like sooner than later. But the crazy thing is on January 28th, I wake up, and before I even look at my planner, which that was the day I had it in my planner to reach out to Monroe Institute, they reached out to me and asked me if I would come and try one of their 1-week gateway programs. And so I did. And there was no obligation of like, you have to create content, you have to talk about it, nothing. They were just like, just come and experience it. And if you feel like sharing or whatever you feel like, however you feel like sharing this with the world, feel free. And yeah, it was really an interesting synchronistic moment. And I knew that when they reached out to me on the day that I put it in my planner to reach out to them, that I just needed to go and experience this thing. Whether you believe in telepathy or not, the truth is something is happening here.
So, Carl Jung referred to synchronicity as the universe winking. It's winking at you, and it's just little nudges that come along. And when we can stay in that receptive mode, and then not be trying to grasp at things. I think this is where manifestation work, we mention it. Manifestation is seen as like law of attraction and so there's a lot of desire and wanting in that.
Monroe doesn't want to convert you. They just want you to listen.
I can tell you one that I witnessed as a trainer. There was an individual who we asked at the beginning, what are your expectations? And she said, I expect a miracle. I need a healing with my mother. And I'm like going, because we can't deliver, we can help.
Like a menu where you're like,
right. We can support you and show you some tools. But what happened was a miracle for her, because in one of the first meditations, she actually had the privilege of seeing and observing her mother as a young lady and how she was treated and how her dreams were dashed and how she just was so disappointed in her life. That's why she behaved the way she did now. And she was so difficult to live with. The next day, she had another meditation experience where she saw her grandmother, so her mother's mother, the same way, and just saw, it just made her have a lot more empathy for how they ended up like they did. And, so that is a miracle.
The rest, we just tell them, all we want your honest answer. If you absolutely are positively sure you remote viewed, in other words, knew something factual about something you were double blind to, raise your hand. Every hand goes up. It's like they're blown away by the fact. What it does is it validates all those strange experiences they have, which they can't explain to another human being. You understand? Mm-hmm. So the miracles become real.
Mm-hmm. So, what do you think? Is the gateway process just an elaborate thought experiment, or is it evidence that reality, consciousness, and even God might not be separate ideas at all, but one and the same? If you had the chance to leave your body to explore time, space, and beyond, would you take it?